Hey, what's up? What's going on? Welcome to another bonus episode of English with Dane, a show designed to improve your English. As always, I'm your host, Dane, and you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at English with Dane. So, another bonus episode today, but a shorter one this time. A while ago on Instagram, I put up a few stories asking you, the listeners, to submit your questions, and you did. So, this episode is dedicated entirely to answering some of the questions you had. So thank you to everyone who wrote to me. Let's get started. You are listening to another bonus episode of English with Dane. Hit it. Okay, so listener questions. Here we go. The first one says, what would be an accurate translation of the verb to resonate? Great question, and a tricky one, too. First, let's talk about the verb a bit before I tell you how I would translate it, or try to translate it anyway. It's a verb we use often in the world of music production, actually, but it can mean a few different things. You'll see how they're linked, though, how they tie together. To resonate means to produce or to be filled with a deep, full reverberating sound. So when a sound is produced in an environment, and that environment, like a hallway, for example, is filled with sound, as it reflects off the surfaces and we continue to hear it, right, echoing away. Imagine you clap very loudly in a hallway like this. Then you could say that sound resonated throughout the hallway, for example. You can use it from the other perspective too, by the way. You can say the hallway resonates or the body of a guitar resonates. So it doesn't have to be from the perspective of the sound. You can talk about the property of the environment too. But there's a different way to use the verb to resonate. And I think this is what the question was really about. When we say that something resonates, maybe a speech, un discurso, a poem, a song, etc., we are referring to the impact it has on us as people with emotions, feelings, dreams, etc. So to resonate in this regard means to evoke memories and images and emotions. You could say something like, her speech really resonated with young people across the country. Or, this author makes his experiences resonate powerfully with his audience, or something like that. So the question was, what would be an accurate translation of the verb to resonate? It's tricky because in Spanish, the word resonar exists. And if we're talking about the first meaning of the word, I would just use that word. But in the case of the second meaning that we talked about, right, to connect, to evoke feelings and memories, to be understood, maybe you could say que algo te llegó, te tocó, te impactó, etc. If you come across a better translation, please let me know. I would appreciate it. All right, next question. This next listener wants me to list my 3 favorite writers, English or American. Good question. As some of you know, I studied English philology, which is the branch of knowledge that deals with the structure, historical development, and relationships of language or languages. So I did have the opportunity to read great works by great writers. But if I had to list 3 that I personally really enjoy, and in no particular order, I think I'd say Mark Twain, Oscar Wilde, and probably Charles Bukowski. I think I value humor and wit, I guess. Aside from being an incredible storyteller, Mark Twain is really funny, and he's one of the few writers that will make me laugh out loud. In the case of Oscar Wilde, I like his turn of phrase, right? His wit, su ingenio. And what I like about Bukowski is how raw his writing is, right? It's unapologetic, and his tone has a general fuck you energy to it, which I think is really cool and unique. Let's do this for a second. Let me share a quote from each of these writers, and you can try and guess who said what. So, okay, try and guess who said it. Once again, the options are Mark Twain, Oscar Wilde, and Charles Bukowski. Here are the quotes. The first one, "The truth is rarely pure and never simple." Next one, If you're losing your soul and you know it, then you've still got a soul left to lose. And finally, I have never let my schooling interfere with my education. The answers are Oscar Wilde, Charles Bukowski, and Mark Twain, respectively. Okay, moving on. Here's another one. This listener asks, what does harness mean? Good question. The word harness, spelled Harness, like many other words in English, is both a noun and a verb. Let's look at it in noun form first. First, the definition. A harness is a restraint or support, especially one consisting of a network of ropes and straps. Apparently, the first use of this word was to refer to what you put on an animal that is pulling something. This can be a carriage, a cart, a plow, etc. So the set of straps and fittings that you put on these animals to be controlled by the driver, let's say. We usually come across harnesses in our lives as safety precautions. If you see someone on the outside of a building, maybe painting or cleaning windows, they're probably wearing a harness. If you like to go rock climbing or skydiving, you'll be wearing a harness. They've become very popular as well with dog owners. I see people taking their dogs out for a walk, and I don't see normal leashes or leads as much these days. I see dogs wearing harnesses. I think the verb to harness comes up, aparece o surge, more frequently though. As a verb, it means to control something or to get control of something, to use it for a particular purpose. Whenever I hear the verb to harness, I always think of this scene from Back to the Future. Here's what I'm talking about. I have the clip.
This is it. This is the answer. It says here that a bolt of lightning is going to strike the clock tower precisely 10:04 p.m. next Saturday night. If we could somehow harness this lightning, channel it into the flux capacitor, it just might work.
All right, next question. Speaking of movies, Filetillo asks, Lebowski or Torrente? First of all, thanks for the question. I love it. And as much as I've laughed with José Luis Torrente over the years, and as much as I've quoted that movie back in the day, I'm going to have to say Lebowski, because how can you not choose the dude?
I am not Mr. Lebowski. You're Mr. Lebowski. I'm the dude. So that's what you call me, you know? That or his dudeness or duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
I should rewatch that movie. All right, next one. Mati RCS asks, what are the most common mistakes English learners make? Good question. I don't think there's a most common one, and I can only really talk about the most common mistakes native Spanish speakers make, because that's the overwhelming majority of my students, right? They've been native Spanish speakers. Let me share a few. In terms of grammatical structures, let's say, I've noticed that some of my lower intermediate students have a hard time when it comes to questions. Including the auxiliary seems to cause some trouble, and word order seems to be an issue sometimes. Saying things like, when he usually gets here, instead of when does he usually get here? Or saying something like, I asked him what was his name, instead of I asked him what his name was. Another common mistake has to do with the third person S, and this one goes hand in hand with a pronunciation issue. I find that a lot of my students have problems adding that S to the verb, and then they struggle when it comes to the pronunciation of some of those verb endings, like the SKS sound, right? Take the following sentence, for example. She always asks him about her. That asks sound can be tricky. I think I'll do an entire episode on this, on common mistakes, because I could talk about it for a while. But one more before we finish. This one I find comes up frequently too, and it's forgetting or adding an extra to or the. I might hear a student say, he called to me the last week. Instead of the correct option, he called me last week. Like I said before, these mistakes are more common amongst my lower intermediate students though. And it's interesting to think about how they change according to the level, right? How the mistakes change according to the level. I think I'll do a full episode about this because I think it deserves more thought. What I'll do is I'll ask a bunch of different teachers that I know about the most common mistakes for each level, and then I'll compile a list of what they say along with examples. All right, that's it for this second bonus episode. The next episode of English with Dane will be the first episode of season 2. So stay tuned to Instagram for sneak peeks and stuff. Support the show by giving it a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to the show, and share it with friends, family, or whoever you think would enjoy it. All right, talk soon. Bye-bye.